1983 ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਫ਼ਤਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੋਨ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਸੈਟਅਪ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਐਨਸੈਟਲ ਇੱਕ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਪਰਮੰਨਿਆ ਨਾਂ ਹੈ। Panasonic surveillance cameras, computers ਤੇ telephone cabling, call center solutions, conference phone, intercom, speakers, wireless headsets, video conferencing, IP technology ਤੇ voicemail systems ਵੀ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹਨ। ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ Panasonic equipment ਵਰਤਦੇ ਐਨਸੈਟਲ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ। Panasonic ਦੇ ਸਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਗਾਰੰਟੀ ਤੇ ਐਨਸੈਟਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲਸ ਦੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਲਓ। In today's segment, we are going to talk to Mr. John Werring, who is a senior science and policy advisor at David Suzuki Foundation. He's going to talk about the environmental regulations as to why there is a need to have such kind of regulations and how we should learn something from that. Let's welcome Mr. John. Welcome to the program.
Well, Harpreet, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So a little bit about yourself, since how long you have been associated with David Suzuki Foundation?
I've been with the foundation since May of 2006, and before that I was with an organization which is now called Eco-Justice.
Okay.
It used to be called the Sierra Legal Defense Fund. I was with them for 15 years.
Right. So as a senior policy advisor, what kind of advice are you giving, and what are you finding as far as environmental regulations are concerned, why there is a need for such kind of regulations?
Okay. As a science and policy advisor, my job is to scan the science that comes out on a annual basis, all the new updated science, and looking at government policy to see if science matches policy, if the policies are being made with good scientific advice. And where there are mismatches, I bring those to the attention of the regulators in government and or to our superiors at the David Suzuki Foundation, who then will interact at higher levels.
When you talk about the government policies also, so a little bit about as far as the government is concerned and the environment is concerned. We have heard a lot about Kyoto Accord and the government about the carbon taxes and all that. Right. So where does the government of Canada stand? What is their feeling about the environment? Are they seriously concerned, or something is being done or not being done?
Well, from our point of view, the current Canadian government is not considering good science. They're not looking at science and policy. What they're more concerned about is resource development. They're looking at it and selling it to the Canadian public as we need more jobs. So in order to have more jobs, we need to exploit our resources, our minerals, our timber, our hydroelectric power. So what they want to do, because it has gone to a global marketplace, is make it easier for companies from outside of Canada to come into Canada to set up shop and to create jobs and to build mines. In order to do that, they've had to take away our environmental regulations. Environmental regulations are there for a specific reason and have been there for years for a reason, and that is to ensure that when a corporation takes an activity on the ground in Canada, that the impact that they have is not too big, or that they have to actually fix and maintain the impacts. There have been issues related to that where it actually slows down the permitting process. So if I'm a miner and I want to build a mine, I say I'm going to go and dig a hole, I'm going to take this mineral out, I'm going to put all my waste somewhere. The government's job then is to ensure that when that company does it does it in the most responsible manner. We're taking away those environmental regulations to allow them to get their projects built faster. But more than that, they're not having any further rules to follow. In fact, they have less rules to follow. And the government is also cutting back on oversight. So we don't have people that are going out into the field to see what these companies are doing.
So that's very interesting what you have talked about. While one side we are concerned all across the world, you know, that these things need to be looked into, but the governments are not looking into it. Why do you feel there is this gap?
Well, the message that the government is putting out is don't worry and be happy, everything will be okay.
Let the money flow.
Yes, we're taking these rules, we're making them better. We're simply just streamlining, we're making them so that everything happens in a faster manner. But in order for, one of the key things about having environmental regulation, you need the rules. The industry needs ground rules. They need specific goalposts and targets that they have to meet. And without those targets, they're not going to meet them. But more than that, we also need to have an infrastructure in place where we actually have people that could go out and say, look at a company's activities and measure them against a certain set of parameters and then tell them whether they're doing the job right or not. Well, unfortunately, we don't even have that. That oversight is gone because even by taking away the rules, we're allowing more and more companies to exploit more and more areas in Canada under less oversight, and there's nothing anymore to hold them accountable. You know, when you have something like the Fisheries Act, and they violate the Fisheries Act, and they can have fines of up to $1 million.
That's right.
But no company has ever been fined $1 million under the Fisheries Act. In fact, there are very few times that fines are even given.
Right. So, Mr. John, I would like to focus on the pipelines also, especially on the West Coast. There's been talk of setting up more pipelines, and there's a lot of protest, especially from the natives we are finding over here. So, what do you feel about when the government allow such kind of projects to come forward? And as you say that there is not much of overseeing those kind of projects, then the companies can do whatever they want. And because their main motive is to make the money and then go. And that's what it is. But the after impact and the after effects of this, what it can have, and how can the public be involved in it so that if something of this kind happens, they can make the government accountable for that?
Well, it's always too late after it happens.
Right.
So we need to have people speaking out before it happens. One of the potential impacts from pipelines is, well, you have to build these things, and you have to create a long corridor, and you're building roads that go with them, and you're building through streams, and you're building across streams, and you're building in areas that are, especially in North America, very seismically unstable.
That's
you know, earthquakes, landslides. If there's a rupture of that pipe and there's a spill of the oil, it's in a very, very remote area.
That's right.
So we need to have an assurance in place. Right now, if there's a pipeline spill in Canada, companies are only liable for, you know, $20, $30 million in cleanup costs. If that costs $1.5 billion to clean up, the taxpayers have to pay the rest. So what we need the people of Canada to do is to tell our government to ensure that before they let a project like that get built, that the company that's building it has to put up a surety. You know, these corporations are making billions of dollars. Well, let's say, okay, if you want to build that pipeline, then you need to put $5 billion in an account over here so that if something happens, we have something that we can rely on to clean up. Not after the fact, because when those things happen after the fact, we see Exxon Valdez, for example. You know, 2 decades ago, and there's still impacts, and there's still costs, and they're still fighting as to who's paying for it.
Right. Mr. John, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure having you and learning from you about the kind of regulations right now we are having and what needs to be done. And in future programs also, we'll discuss more in details as to how the public can be involved so that the governments become accountable and they just don't make policies which are not in the interest of the people.
Well, the one thing I will emphasize is the public needs to be involved. And without the public pushing government to make policy, policy doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.